Welcome to the big show, boys and girls. The playoffs are upon us, and they are a week old. Some things that have happened that we're not too surprised though. They're not too surprised about. Some things have happened that we're very intrigued about. Let's come in hot right off the top, Jet. What are some flames that didn't burn too bright this time around?
Uh, Ironically, the Miami Heat. Something stinks in Miami.
That's why I did that.
uh, the Heat have faced the Bucks, which is a team that they pretty easily dismantled last season in the playoffs. But seems like the tables have turned. I think them missing a couple of key players like Kelly Olynyk and Jay Crowder, who's now on the Suns, really took a toll. The chemistry wasn't there all season due to COVID and other injuries. But I feel as if in this matchup, they were like thoroughly outclassed. Only one game was really close in this series. What really showed to me during this series was the Heat's lack of size. It really hampered them on the rebounding front. They gave up a lot of offensive rebounds and second chance points. Bobby Portis was killing them off the bench for the Bucks. And mainly their two stars, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, really didn't have a tremendous series. And their other two, young swingmen, Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, they really got clamped up. Their 3-point shooting was down across the board. The Bucks shot really good. The Bucks kept switching defenders on Jimmy Butler, which really made him have a terrible series. The addition of Drew Holiday really shone bright in the series, and I think throughout the rest of the playoffs, however far that they go, you're going to see like that was one of the best additions that they did in the offseason. All right, I'm going to go into some shooting percentages from the two young swingmen.
They're pretty bad.
They're pretty bad. So Tyler Hero was only shooting 31% from the three-point line, and necessarily that's not like too terrible, but it is when like you counted on him to shoot 35% or higher from the 3-point line. And then the same thing with Duncan Robinson. He shot only 37%, but a majority of his shots is all 3-pointers. So that's not a high percentage for him.
The first time I saw him was a Christmas Day, and that's all he was doing was hitting threes.
Yeah. The scouting report it wasn't out on them last season, but it's definitely out on them now. And in a playoff series where people know where you're trying to get your points from, they're not just gonna let you do what you want to do. You gotta adjust and try different things in the playoffs. And I don't think all the adjustments Miami tried to do, it just didn't work. And it's funny to me, like Miami Heat were in the James Harden sweepstakes, and they didn't want to trade their young pieces like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. But I feel like
maybe they should have.
Maybe they should have. And as well as like when how I said earlier, the lack of size really hampered them in the series. Andre Drummond was on the market when he got bought out, and I don't think they really went that hard to get him. But I feel like he would have really been a good piece for the Miami Heat period, but definitely in the series.
Especially seeing how he's kind of beefed up the Lakers interior.
Yeah.
And that's a funny point. Like, just like imagine, not to get too far off topic, but just imagine if, let's say the Heat had engaged more with the Rockets for James Harden. How much happier would the Rockets be right now getting those two young players as opposed to getting Vic, who they want them sending away anyway. Send it away anyway. He gets hurt.
Yeah.
They got nothing. They got nothing for James Harden. And if Miami had just, I was probably more on Miami's side than Houston's, that granted. But, if the Heat had been more engaged in that, how much better the Rockets may have lined themselves up for.
Nah, absolutely. And if they still wanted to play that, this is kind of off topic as well still, but if the Heat still, I mean, not the Heat, but if the Rockets wanted to play that same type of style they were playing with James Harden, they'd have been way more equipped if they would have had Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. Like it would have fit what they were trying to do.
Right. And you brought up we only had one competitive game. That game one was great. Like that was the first game of the actual playoffs, and I'm thinking, wow, like this is a great start to the playoffs in general. This is a great start to this series. This is going to be fantastic. Every game's going to be down the wire. Like Jimmy Butler had a couple mental lapses towards the end of that game, but he really came through at overtime when it mattered, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then then just the wheels fell off, and
yeah, it never like, it was like, dang, like they're really getting whooped.
Yeah, and you were bringing up these bad numbers. As a whole, they shot under 40% from the field. That is horrible.
That is horrible.
That's not from three. That's overall.
Overall.
And Jimmy Butler was under 30%. He couldn't throw a beach ball in the ocean.
Bro, it was bad. Every game I'm watching it and I'm just like, all right, the Heat they're gonna turn it around right here. And it's just like, no, they're not. They're just gonna continue to get punched in the mouth. They really lack like scoring. I think they couldn't score the ball. Jimmy's not like, Jimmy can score, but I wouldn't necessarily call him like, oh, I need a bucket right now, let me give it to Jimmy Butler. I don't think of him like that. And neither is Bam. Bam is a really good player, but I don't think of him as a go-to scorer or we need a basket right now, give the ball to Bam. Like I don't feel that about him yet. So I don't know.
Yeah, they had this kind of lightning in a bottle coming in from last year, and they might need to be doing some soul searching this summer.
Yeah, they got some things to figure out.
Well, as far as other dismal performances are concerned, we're going to start off this topic and call it "Thanks for playing. Smell you later." And thanks to some pretty woeful performances from the Washington Wizards supporting cast, as they've tried their darndest to stave off elimination from a stacked Sixers team. Bradley Beal has been putting up 30 points a night. He's been trying his darndest to keep the ship afloat, but Russie's down, only averaged 17 points a night. He hasn't had, the triple doubles haven't been flowing the way they did towards the end of the year. And past the two of them, there's only two other players on the roster. They're averaging double figures. So, like, how you can just that's just gonna tank you, right? Like, you'll start to wonder how they even get in here, how they even get through that play-in tournament.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's a crazy stat to have. The only other players on your team that average over double. It's only two other players on your team that average over double figures. So I don't understand how y'all winning unless y'all scoring 50 apiece every night, which they probably kind of are.
They certainly could. Could, but they most certainly probably wouldn't have put themselves in a 3-0 hole if they were. And the other smell you later, I'm not going to go quite in as hard as that. I want to tip my hat, or I would if it wasn't backwards because I got street cred.
You got to tip it like this.
I want to tip my cap a little bit to the Grizzlies because that was a team that we figured they'd beat the Spurs, but we didn't think they were going to go too far after that because they were going to have to play the Lakers and the Warriors. So not only play the Warriors, they bounce them out, and then they come in, albeit Jazz were without Donovan Mitchell, their MVP candidate. Of course, he's not finalist. They went in there, they took game one, they went at them hard, and even when the Jazz came back, they still kept coming. I think John Randle even had 30-something that game, or 31. And then he had a monster game. Granted, it was in a loss, but a monster game too, 47.
Yeah, he definitely had a monster game that game.
And he's averaging almost 30. He's averaging almost 34 in this series. You kind of feel bad for him. We're gonna write him off. We're gonna kiss them off to see and say see you next year. It was fun while it lasted, but they really John Branch over 50%. That was my other number on John, but they they got Jared Jackson back in the mix. He was starting to play well. Dylan Brooks really came into his own. They just looked fun.
Did.
They
No,
just
they did.
looked fun to watch. And once Spider Mitchell came back, it was just too much, and the Jazz have rolled from that. But again, the ship is sailing. We'll say goodbye now until we circle back at a future point. But the Grizzlies were at least fun, albeit at their short stay.
Yeah, I would like to say something else about the Grizzlies. If I'm approaching free agency, and I watched the whole play-in and playoff first round, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, I think I might want to be a part of that. If I'm like a player of like some kind of stature, I'm like, I think I might want to be a part of that. I could be the missing piece that they need, because I think they're only like maybe a piece or two away. But definitely they were a good surprise in the playoffs, and I can't wait to see what's next with Ja Morant.
Absolutely, if they can get another big to help out Valanciunas, if he stays. I know his contract's coming up, but if they were to get him to stay and get another big that could maybe that could do a little inside out, that they could do their thing down low. They could also come out and shoot it a little bit to play off of Ja's driving ability.
Mm-hmm.
That would be very, very clutch for them. They definitely be dangerous next year.
I would say they already have that in Jared Jackson. He just got to stay healthy.
That's true.
Yeah.
So what you're really saying is stand pat, Grizzlies. Don't blow your load now, because you're going to have money later.
Yes. And Dylan is looking like he's going to be okay. He's going to be really good. I didn't think he could score like that the way he was doing in this series, and I'm like, oh, you showed me something, and I like it.
I like it a lot.
Right.
Don't forget cats and dogs. Follow your boys on Instagram and Twitter at HoopsBoysPod. Stick with us next up. We're going to take a deep dive into a couple of roller coaster series that the Western Conference has teed up for us this postseason. Keep it with right here, Hoops Boys Podcast.
Hoops Boys. Hey, welcome back to the Hoops Boys Pod. We have some special guests, my boy Shad and my boy Greg, to help us get through this segment of the show. And first, we want to touch on the Clippers. This has been one of the most topsy-turvy teams to me. At first glance, with this matchup with the Mavericks, I would think that maybe they would have lost a game. But they've been playing without a sense of urgency, it seems like. And if they do that with a player the caliber of Luka, he would definitely send them home early. Now the series is tied, but I think the Clippers weren't hanging their hat on their most strongest part of their game, which would be their defense. They were not playing defense at all. Like, the Mavs were getting open shots left and right. They kind of righted the ship last game, but I don't know. I want to see if the Clippers can keep consistent with their defensive intensity and shut down Luka and stop the other players from doing whatever they want to do on the floor. But this is one of the most wonkiest series in the playoffs.
I wouldn't say it's wonky. It's just, I think I'm a Clippers fan. I've been a Clippers fan for about 25 years now. And it's just, they always have too many one-way players. It's like they have probably 3 or 4 good offensive players and the rest defensive players. It's like nobody really plays kind of both ends of the floor. I know they got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard right now that are kind of like the two-way players, but it's like they never have like probably half their roster that you feel like, can do both. And that's their problem. It's like they rely on too much of one or the other, either all offense or all defense. And when it comes to playing against the Mavs had their number last year. Like, Luka was kind of doing their thing. I feel like if Porzingis didn't get injured last year, they probably would have beat the Clippers. That's coming from a Clippers fan. It's just, I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's just the GM, but it's just like the players that they pick, they just don't gel well. And it's all like everybody does one thing well, and that's it. And I think that's their problem.
I agree with that. I definitely feel it has to play with the coaching for surely, because Ty Lue, shout out to him. He's an NBA champion, coaching and playing, but I feel like he's definitely being outcoached. Greg, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, the game to me that I guess the question we all have, including myself, is who are the Clippers? And I'm the first person to admit, I thought after last year's debacle, if you call it that, I thought in my head there's no way they will come out flat, and it's exactly what happened. In game 2 in particular, I mean, we were speaking earlier, Reggie Miller and the broadcast crew they were commenting themselves. You don't usually hear them that frank, and they were questioning, what are they doing? Like, you don't ever see a team with such lack of defensive intensity in a playoff game. The Mavericks were scoring at will. It struck me as that. It's like every move the Clippers made, the Mavericks were ready for. It was lack of intensity. So now the Clippers obviously turn it around. We're 2-2. But is this who the Clippers really are? My point is, after 2 years, this inconsistency, maybe this is who they actually are.
Yeah.
And I'm of the belief that I thought going in they were going to turn the switch on, and I actually thought they may win the title. I have no confidence whatsoever after seeing these 4 games. I think they still may win the series, but I don't know how much longer do we give them a pass for? It just keeps happening.
Yeah.
So I don't feel by any means they're about to put 4 strong weeks together and make a run anymore. Because I just don't understand how in a playoff game, especially, like I said, game 2, they're down 0-1 at home. That's a nightmare scenario. And it was like they looked disinterested. Yeah. So I know that's not the case, but I just feel like something, like Chad was talking earlier, there's something missing there. I firmly believe that at this point. That doesn't have the feel to me of a together team and one that's going to win a title.
Right.
I was trying to do a deep dive on the numbers to see if I can notice any trends, and the numbers are pretty deceiving. Like, Kawhi's averaging 33 a night. Paul George has put up 25, which is pretty much right on par with his regular season. And it's kind of hard to find trends in their shooting, too. I mean, in Kawhi's case, in the losses, he's still shooting over 50%. He's shooting considerably better, 24 for 32 in the wins, but still not shooting bad in the losses. Paul George is mixing and matching. He shoots 8 for 8. He shoots putrid 8 for 18 in the game 1 loss, and equally putrid 6 for 16 in a win in game 4. So it's kind of hard to find that. The only thing I can kind of pick out is their plus minus, which I think maybe comes into the effort, the consistency thing, because you have Paul George's minus 22 in their losses, plus 33 their wins. Kawhi's, excuse me. Paul George is minus 24 in their losses, plus 22 of the wins. That's the only number, just from a statistical perspective, that I can find that remotely tries to illustrate what's happened here.
Well, again, I'm just going to go, for me, it was game 2, is that I don't have the box in front of me. What did they give up? 120? Dallas was scoring at will. And something you touched on about coaching is I felt like Lou, like I just couldn't sit there and say, what is going on? Like, they were ready for every move. The adjustments, there were none. It was perplexing, put it that way. So for me, I think, again, if the Clippers make a concerted effort to play D and to do that, they'll win this series and can go pretty far. But I have no confidence at this point. They'll do that consistently. I just don't at this point.
I just think they're – oh.
Sorry, Shad. They gave up 127 that game.
120.
Yeah, game 2.
I just don't think they're built, well enough for this new NBA. I think they have like an old school 90s mentality team where you have probably 2, maybe 3 people that can score and everybody else plays defense. I think you have, Kawhi, Paul George, and they have, kind of Reggie Jackson. And pretty much everybody else is like, all right, they're hit or miss. They're defensive players. They do, 1 or 2 things right. And it's usually on the defensive side, rebounding, one of those type of things. And I just don't think it, it translates to today's NBA. I mean, I think they're kind of like the Knicks of the Western Conference. Like the Knicks, they have a couple people. If those people aren't hitting, then they're not going to do well. And I just think, kind of the mentality of the Clippers, the history of it, been a bad team since forever kind of plays into that. And then last year's collapse probably just weighs on them mentally. So I think they'll win this series mainly because I think Luka's injured. They talked about his neck, this last game. And I think they'll probably win these next two. But after that, I'm not sure. I'm hopeful. Something, maybe kind of clicks. But I mean, I think it's probably just the same old Clippers, maybe, first round, second round out, just because I think this team is just not built for it, just the way I think it's probably maybe the GM's fault. Like they're just built too old school for my mentality, for what I think about the Clippers.
Speaking of the GM, their general manager is someone with some head coaching success in his past. Do you think they need to? We spoke about coaching being difficult with Tilo. Do you think there's a possibility to move on from Tilo, bring Frank down, put him maybe in his more natural seat on the bench, and get someone in the front office that's more of a GM? Is that like what's our vibe on the future of Tyronn Lue in Los Angeles?
Well, no, I think it's way too early. I mean, it's his first year. I think you need to give any coach at least probably 2 years, unless it's, very disastrous, like, they're the worst team in the league type of thing, and he's losing the team, kind of like, was it John Beeline in Cleveland type of thing. But, I think you got to give him this year and next year at the very least. I would just maybe, I don't know, I think they just need to kind of get some type of analyst or somebody who's kind of like just scouts the NBA and just maybe get some people who, I think the main thing is they need to get people who can create their own shots. I feel like they only got like 3 people, that create their own shots. And besides that, they go stagnant. And the defense, they got kind of an older roster, I think, players in their late 20s, 30s. And it just, I don't think you could do that really every night, unless you got a young roster who's just hungry, kind of like the Knicks or, the Bucks or somebody like that. The Miami Heat, was last year. So I just think, they just need, a kind of a new roster. I kind of think they signed the wrong people. They signed Luke Kennard to a big contract, Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverly. And it just feels like those people are just the old NBA, and they just need to sign, maybe draft, trade, whatever.
One dimensional, like you said to me, like some of them.
Right. One-dimensional people they gave big contracts, and they just need to, kind of, I wish they still have the amnesty people. They used out amnesty those probably 3 people I was talking about, because those are big people, contract people who don't do anything but one thing good. And they need to try to maybe draft or sign some free agents, these people that kind of, I would say the NBA now is create your own shot. So they need to find like 3 or 4 people more than what they have to create their own shot. And I think the Clippers would be all set.
Question I would have to you is because let's say they go out, even if they go through the first round, I feel, my opinion, if they go out in the second round here, I'm not saying they blow the whole thing up, but I can't imagine there aren't drastic changes, whether it's personnel, coach, maybe even GM, just because that, like you said, they're aging. Kawhi, they're not getting any younger. So do you go into next season with the same? I just get the feeling that pressure, and being in LA, they're not hiding in Oklahoma City, right? They're not the Lakers, but they're still LA. If they go out like that again, I just, my own opinion, I don't think that team looks anywhere near the same going into next year, however that's configured.
I agree. I keep seeing like the whole people are putting like Kawhi with the Golden State 3. You know what I mean? They keep doing that, like saying that he's gonna leave.
God, I hope not. Anywhere but Golden State, man.
Yeah.
Now with Clay's contract on the books.
Right. Although I don't think it would be as bad as when KD was there, it still would be bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Switching gears now to another razor thin Western Conference playoff matchup. Help me figure out what's going on with the Suns. They have not been their typical high scoring selves. Now, is there whether that's some consistency issues with them, whether that's playing at a very defensive oriented Lakers team? but Phoenix isn't even averaging 100 points a night. The Lakers are a little around that themselves, if I'm not mistaken. And in their wins, Chris Paul's played over 30 minutes. He's been plus 15, and under 30 minutes in the losses, he's been minus 22. Booker's pouring in points left and right. Granted, we know Booker can't guard a fence post. And DeAndre Ayton's averaging a high triple double. So it's not like Chris Paul doesn't need to be the guy anyway. He just needs to make it work. So despite that and the other and the two young stars putting up numbers, what's going on with Phoenix? Can they not get past this rock that is the Lakers, or is there something else going on with them? Are they the problem?
Well, I think they got to just crawl before they walk. I know, they haven't made the playoffs in pretty much forever before Chris Paul came. And I just think, most teams, they go out, first round when they come into the playoffs for the first time in a while. So I think this may be like kind of their year where they just kind of just get the experience. You're facing the champions. You're facing LeBron James, somebody who's been, pretty much in the finals, it feels like pretty much every year since he's been in the league, it feels like. So he's going to find a way. He just has that mentality. The Suns, they're a young team. I feel like maybe nobody besides Chris Paul has pretty much been in the playoffs. So it's going to just be hard. You're going, you can't go up against somebody who's had, 100 plus games of experience, on another team. And you have one guy who's has, playoffs experience, but, kind of choked in the past, quote unquote. And nobody else has, probably made it. So I don't think it's really about them having a problem. I think it's just they need experience. It's just you need time. You need that 1 year to kind of, go get your lumps. And, this is probably the year. I think next year, if Chris Paul stays, and they, get a free agent or they draft a trade for somebody, then they'll be a real contender. But I think it's also just a bad match for them. Who goes in as a second seed facing the defending champions?
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
This is your reward for being the second seed.
And that on his point, this is even for a 2-7 seed. This is such an abnormal 7 seed. When do you ever, even in our lifetime, remember a 7 seed that's the Lakers?
Right.
The best player. I mean, honestly, that's as much anything. Like that's just that's a bad luck of the draw, right? I mean,
for sure.
And I would say this, touch on what he said as well. I call it growing pains. You've seen in the losses late in the games, they lost their composure mentally. You could see it. Booker, I remember one play, he goes to argue a foul. As he turns to the ref, it's about 2 minutes left. The ball bounces right past him. If he wasn't arguing with the ref, he's getting the loose ball in the steal, and they're getting a bucket. So I do think it's part growing pains. And listen, you got to give I am not a Lakers fan. I hate them, but you have to give them credit. Even with those guys out with LeBron and AD, their defensive numbers were really, really good this year. So Chris Paul's injuries played a huge part in the losses, but they are pretty good defensively. Period. We touched on the Knicks earlier. The Knicks had them late in the season, up 9 with 3 minutes left, and 4 minutes left, we didn't score again. So part give the Lakers credit, and I mean, did we really expect anything other than 2-2? I mean, they're the Lakers. The Suns are a great team. I kind of think it's where they probably should be. And now it's a matter of where is everyone injury-wise? Is AD out a game? Is he out more than that? Is Paul anywhere close to 100%? So I just think going into this series, I would have guessed it was 2-2 now.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
They got no favors getting the Lakers as the 7. No way.
I feel as if CP's injury definitely played a part to the Suns' slow start. But the way that I see the series going, if AD doesn't play next game, the Lakers, and LeBron doesn't go 0 dark 30, the Lakers are probably going to lose the series. It's going to be really tough to beat that Suns team without. They already were in at full power because LeBron is probably 80%. And now AD getting banged up every other game. It's just.
I agree.
It could. Yeah, it could be.
Just ask you guys, and it's not something discernible. I'm asking what you guys have seen. LeBron obviously hasn't played poorly. He does. I don't know exactly what. To me, he does not look 100%. He does not.
No, he doesn't.
It just seems like, and you understand, he's probably, they're not going to tell us what's going on. He's probably trying to save whatever he has left. So he can't go 100% on every play, but he definitely, just to me, doesn't look like he is fully healthy at all.
Yeah. He said something like later in the season when he had the ankle injury, and he was just like, I don't think I would ever be 100% ever again, like, and throughout his career. I mean, normal wear and tear of a long career as he has had, but also like that ankle injury was gruesome, and for him to have to turn around and now he got to play the playoff series, and I mean to play in the playoffs, and normally the Lakers or LeBron period, he goes far, you know what I'm saying? So it's just, I know it's a tough situation for the Lakers.
Well, one last interesting thing for the Suns is, sometimes development happens out of bad luck. But when Paul got hurt, Cameron Payne has played great this series.
Nah, he has.
That's a big minute. So the point is, if nothing else, even if Paul is close to 100%, like Payne coming and getting those minutes, you can tell he's fully confident right now. And that's a big deal. Like whether Paul's hurt or not, like Payne pretty much took over in the loss. I think it was game 3. I mean, he hit like 5 threes in 2 minutes to bring it to within 6. They were getting killed. So I think for the Suns, that's a great development. It's like another kid who's fully confident right now.
The Cameron twins.
He really has been, though. He's been good.
Wait, he's a twin?
No, they're just Payne and Cameron Johnson. They've been their 2 best reserves.
Okay, I get you. Now we touched on the Suns and Lakers. I want to go to another Western Conference matchup, the Nuggets and Blazers. This has been like one of my favorite matchups in the playoffs so far. These are 2 very offensive-minded teams. They both well coached, and the series has had some great moments so far. One of my favorite moments is when I think this was game 1. Carmelo Anthony checked in. They're in Denver, and they booed him. In under 4 minutes, he scored 15 points and pretty much put that game out of reach. That was pretty. It was pretty funny to see. And then also the battle between Joker and Nurkic. If you guys remember, they were on the same team at one point. And then Nurkic got traded to Portland, and it's good to see them like battle against each other, old school matchups between 2 bigs. And also another moment that I liked last game, Dame had his first like quote unquote bad game. He shot 1 of 10 from the field, but his supporting cast really stepped up, and they ended up blowing Denver out. That was. I don't think the fireworks are done in the series. I think this might go 7. I want to hear how you guys feel about this series. Greg, let's start with you. Or Shad, if you want to start, since you spoke earlier.
No, I mean, I'll start. I mean, I think it's the Pretender series. I think it's one of the first round matchups. I think it's one of the first round matchups where I don't see a team, representing the Western Conference in the finals. I could see any other, matchup having at least one team coming from, that matchup going to the Western Conference finals, or at least the NBA finals. I just think these are 2 teams, they have too many injuries, or they're just, too soft, and they just can't, they don't have that championship DNA in them. For the Nuggets, I think it's the Jamal Murray, injury that kind of hurt them. I know last year they were, pretty good. They, came back on my Clippers 3-1. I think they did it to Portland last year. Somebody that came back again 3-1. That first round. But I just feel like they don't have it with that Jamal Murray injury. They just need another score. I know Michael Porter Jr. has kind of stepped up, but I think he's probably a year away. I think he's probably on a real championship contender. He's probably an off the bench 6th man, shooter like a Lou Williams or Jordan Clarkson type of player. With Portland, I just think they're too small. They're too soft inside. I think when it comes down, you're going to need to get stops and get some rebounds. I think they try to put, Nurkic is in there, but they try to put Melo or Covington, and they're just not to me, true power forwards who can kind of get you, rebounds or stops in the clutch when you need it. So I think it's a pretender series. I think there were a lot of teams that rely too much on jump shots and a lot of offense. And if they're not hitting these, threes or these long twos, they're not going to stop anybody defensively, and it's not going to work. So that's why I say I don't see any of these two teams going past round two, no matter who they play. Yeah.
That's a hot take.
That is a hot take. Greg, same boat?
So close. So I close to what he said. I firmly, let me start. I thought this was a long series. They both are somewhat flawed. And then, again, the Jamal injury is huge. Portland gives up too many points. I would expect this 2-2 right now. Denver was horrible on Saturday. Malone blasted them, said it was pretty funny. He totally blasted the starters, lack of effort. I mean, he really got into them. You're basically trying to give them a kick in the rear end. Don't come out with this effort game 5. I will say this with Denver. Porter is the X factor for me, and I do agree that he's probably a year away. But he is talented enough. Could he be that second huge scorer? Could he be a Jamal Murray? He could be. Again, I don't see that happening this year. But I will say with the level that Jokic has played at, and they're pretty deep. Like, I like their bench. I don't rule them out completely. I give them a shot where if Portland won the series, I'm fully on board. I just don't think Portland – you can't play that way. You can't give up 120 points a game throughout the playoffs and win. We all know the game's played differently in the postseason. I think Denver has a shot. And again, with Jokic just probably the MVP, and I mean, I have to give them a chance with someone like that playing at his level. But I'd agree it's a tall order, but I'll give Denver somewhat of a shot if they move on.
My biggest takeaway from this series is I wish I could stay awake for any of the games.
Not game 4. The second half of game 4 was over 10 minutes. Denver went on, Portland 10-0 run to start the second half. It was over right then. They were never in the game. So you missed nothing Saturday. That was not entertaining.
Greg, as you noted, that I was looking over the numbers, and as Greg noted, they're both scoring at their usual clip for the regular season, 113, 115, respectively. And then Shad noticed there's Portland in particular being a small team. They're both shooting a lot, and they're shooting well. Portland's shooting 40% from 3 in the series. Denver shooting 38 from 3 in the series. Where the Stars are, Jet talked of Dave's struggle in the last game, but overall he's averaging 30 and just under 10 assists per game. Joker's put up 31-11. He's shooting 45% from 3. So despite your guys' downward trends on the futures market on them, are we at least gonna see a long series and be entertained, even if we don't have any realistic expectations from them?
So let me add one thing that I just thought of quickly on the Denver Portland. Here's the reason why another reason I think Denver has a shot. So whoever wins this Suns Lakers series, that's who they're going to match up with next, the winner of this. Where we can pretty well be full confident at this point that neither one of these teams is getting out fully healthy. So, Paul, I don't think he is. If AD is banged up and LeBron is, so I think Denver, could benefit from the length of that series, the nature of it. That I think whoever comes in is nowhere near 100%. So another factor, I think Denver has a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely a long series. I think this goes, 7 games. I would probably put my money on Portland if I had to, but I just feel like it's a pretender series. I feel like I get a series like this every year in each conference. I just feel like, you have to have one of these teams advance, obviously, but none of these teams are going to make it to the conference finals, and definitely not the finals. I feel like in the West, this is it. In the East, it's the Hawks and the Knicks. Like, they just feel like very pretty much pretenders. And they're just not ready to make that leap to, that conference finals or NBA finals type of round. And for Portland, I think it's just, they're kind of a pretender team. They have Dame, who's good, but they have CJ McCollum, who's kind of like, Dame and Lillard light. And I think he's probably more off the bench type of player on a championship type of team. He shouldn't be a second option. And I think they have just a bunch of they're kind of like the Clippers, except on the offensive end, they have a bunch of shooters. And they have nobody that plays defense. So they're kind of like the Clippers, but just an opposite, an opposite team. with Denver, I think if they had Jamal Murray, I would say they're probably the second best team in the West. I would say probably behind the Lakers if they were healthy. But obviously that injury is huge. And, Joker, I think probably be MVP. He could kind of, give you a triple double kind of every night. But outside of that, I mean, I just think, you're missing 20 plus points a night with Jamal Murray and somebody get their own shot. I think it's going to hurt them in the long term.
I think how did I know you were going to throw the pretender label on the Hawks?
Hey, on that same token, listen, I think he tied that the Knicks as well. I'll pretend for 10 years if we win more than 13 games for the first time since the 70s. So let's keep pretending. I'm good with it.
I mean, I didn't want to try to throw them under the bus, but
I get it. You're right.
Every year you can kind of pick out one series in each conference. And you're like, this matchup is pretenders. They're just there. None of them is gonna make it any kind of noise in the playoffs. They're just kind of there, and one of them has to advance. But other than that next round they're gonna get probably swept or gentlemen swept.
Unfortunately, the way things have been going in recent years, Portland's been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years running. Before we wrap up this discussion, let's there's a few teams we haven't touched on in this show because the series aren't really giving us anything surprising or interesting from what we were expecting from them. What do you guys thoughts on teams like the Nets going up against the Celtics or the Sixers, any of these other random teams that we haven't touched on in the show that you might want to take a part on? Is Kyrie going to dip out after his little water bottle assassin situation?
I mean, I think the Celtics are probably the most disappointing team in the NBA. I feel like they've always had probably the most talent in the Eastern Conference. And I know this year, the Brown injury hurt them, but I don't know, for some reason they're just not gelling. I don't know if they need to fire their coach or what it is. They did too many trades. They just have maybe locker room chemistry problems. But they're very disappointing. I thought they would be, probably like a top 2 seed. I thought it'd probably be like them, Brooklyn, and maybe Philadelphia, but they're in the 7th seed. So they're very disappointing. I don't expect them, to fire the coach, but I think that'd probably be the best move, to get kind of blown out by, the Nets. Is unexpected because I think they're probably the one team that probably should have matched up well with the Nets. They got talent all over the board. It seems like they're a team that can go like 9-10 deep, and they've had all these draft picks and they've had these, trades over the years, and they've had Trader Dan kind of, make his move with all these players. But maybe time just kind of maybe blow the team up. I think this year they probably gotta get rid of Kemba somehow. I think maybe they gotta fire Brad Stevens. I don't know, maybe trade some of their bench pieces to get another star. I mean, I don't think they probably should have got rid of Hayward or maybe, got rid of Rozier. They got to get rid of Smart. So they got to do something. It's just not working. They got too much talent. If you look from 1 to 10, it looks like they got as much talent as, the Brooklyn Nets almost, besides maybe the top maybe 1 or 2. But I think that they should have been right in that conversation as, a top Eastern contender. And then there was 7th seed who barely made it in. So I don't know what it is, but they got to do something. I think after this year, they got to take a long, deep look in the mirror and, change something up. They're the Clippers of the Western Conference, I guess.
Well, from someone who, so I live up here, although I'm not a Celtic fan. And unfortunately, the main reason for me, and I love Kemba Walker, it's clear to me, like they didn't have the continuity because he's in and out of the lineup so much. I mean, they rested him for weeks at a time so I don't think at this point, and I hate it because I love Kemba, he's not 100% healthy. I don't know if he'll ever get back to that level. And I honestly think in that case, like that's pick your poison, because once Kyrie leaves, that, the big question here was, well, do we blow it up again? But we have 2 young stars, and Kemba was there. And I agree, like you still are in a window where they could compete. Unfortunately, I really do think I hate to say cast the cloud because he's a great kid. Teammates love him. He hasn't looked the same. And I think like any team in the league, you take one of those big pieces, no less a point guard who's playing at 70%. I think unfortunately that's the case. And I don't really see why he's necessarily comes back 100% healthy next year or going forward either. So kind of one of those things. It's sad to me because I love Kemba, but I think that's the underlying factor there.
What are your guys' thoughts, especially with the Embiid latest injury? How does that change Philadelphia's outlook?
Well, what else is new? I feel like he's always injured.
Just waiting for it, just ticking time bomb.
Oh yeah, well, it feels like he plays maybe half a season. He always gets hurt, kind of like Anthony Davis. There's probably a few more I'm not thinking of right now, but it's just like you just know somehow they're gonna get injured, and it's gonna affect their team. Whether it's in the playoffs or just before the playoffs, and it's just gonna change that dynamic of the team. I mean, I never expected Philadelphia to come out of the Eastern Conference. I know they're the 1 seed, but I just felt like it was either going to be Brooklyn or Milwaukee, no matter what. So I just feel like Philadelphia is just too soft. I don't know what it is. I don't think Simmons can shoot. He's a great player, but I mean, his shot. I mean, I feel like I can beat him in a 3-point contest.
His shot is broken. It's broke.
Yeah. He's like him, and when they had Markelle Fultz, that probably was the worst shooting, backcourt in the history of basketball, right there.
Yeah, I agree.
Including 4th grade basketball. That was a horror show.
Like, I don't know if he was, if he wasn't 6'10", I'm not sure if he'd be in the league. If he was 6 foot, I definitely say he wouldn't be in the league. But he's a big athlete. But I just feel like Philadelphia they're too soft, they're too injury prone. Doc Rivers, I never really liked his coaching. I feel like he is still riding on the coattails of what the 07, 08 Celtics or whatever year they won.
Mm-hmm.
He just always relies too much on like probably about 7 players, and it just wears them down, kind of like probably Thibodeau at the end of the season. And with him being paired with a fragile body like Embiid, it's just gonna something has to give. And obviously with Embiid getting injured, that's gonna be given. That's what gave. And I don't see them making it to the finals, even though they're the 1 seed.
With or without Embiid?
Both.
Who comes out the East?
Greg, you got a challenge for that? Philly was your pick.
I think Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Well, so what Chase and I spoke beforehand. So I agree to an extent with Philly, but going into the playoffs, here was my thought on them. They are the 1 seed. Chad, what you talked on earlier, they're getting which I'd agree, the Knicks and the Hawks in the second round, they're kind of pretenders. I would agree with that. So the way I envisioned this prior to the playoffs was that Philly would get through, if they can get through healthy, they get through a quick series with Washington. They pretty much have an easy second round with the Knicks or the Hawks, and they avoid the gauntlet. They're only going to have to play one of Milwaukee and the Nets. But now, again, I mean, tonight in the microcosm, Embiid gets hurt. That's now an out of 4-game sweep. So I still think they have a chance, but 100% they do not if Embiid doesn't come back fully healthy. So, and then, I mean, hopefully for him and the Sixers, there's some good news, but that dampens everything for them. If he's out at any time, they'll get through Washington, but they might not even. I don't even think they'd beat Atlanta if Embiid is not healthy for that series. So stand by. I'm not totally throwing in the towel on them yet, but this changes things for 100%.
I guarantee the Philadelphia 76ers will not make it to the NBA Finals.
Greg, what's yours?
Yeah, what's yours, Greg?
My guarantee is that I will hold on to the belief that the Clippers still have a shot, and they will get me really angry within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, that's not a
guarantee. That's my guarantee. No, I still think it's kind of wide open. I really do. I mean, the Lakers with their injuries, Milwaukee looks the best to me right now. But again, they're going up against Brooklyn. So that's my guarantee. The Clippers will get me angry.
I can say that. Come on, it's not a guarantee. Make a prediction, man. Do something.
He's been getting mad at them for the last 2 decades.
I guarantee the Knicks will not win the title.
Come on, man.
Wow. Little stab, little twist.
I mean, to be realistic, the media were given the Nets the trophy in December. So in theory, to say the Sixers aren't going to make it out of the East is
Here's what I'll change my prior to the final to the playoffs. I took the Clippers. I will change that to Milwaukee. I'm going to go with Milwaukee. So I don't know if you want me to guarantee that. That's a bit much going up against Brooklyn next week, but
Yeah.
I'm high on the Bucks right now. So
Chase, you want to make a prediction?
Ooh. Part of me wants to put a lock on the Suns, but I don't really know if I want to do that.
that's tough. We don't know if anybody's healthy on either team.
Yeah. I'm gonna guarantee. You know what? I'm gonna guarantee that the Lakers are gonna push the Suns to Game 7, and Chris Paul is gonna shake off the demons and send LeBron packing.
Okay.
All right, Chad. I just thought of it now that he just said that, and you put me on the spot here. I guarantee the Lakers don't win the title because I don't think they'll stay healthy. They haven't all year. I don't think they will going forward. So even they beat the Suns, I guarantee the Lakers don't win.
Chad, throw it out there before we wrap.
All right. I guarantee Kyrie would take another sabbatical before the playoffs is over.
Great one.
It might be tomorrow.
It may be tomorrow. One thing else that I guarantee is that you can hit us up on Who's Voice Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. And that we'll be back after these very important messages to talk about my beloved Knicks. Well, me and CProc's beloved Knicks. Who's Voice Pod?
Welcome back, kids. To close this out, let's make LeBron feel like a little bit of a dirtbag. Everyone always thinks that the king is just that when it comes to the finals. And as it turns out, as much of a substantive claim as LeBron has to that title, no pun intended, there's another constant championship participant who just ended quite the impressive streak of 6 consecutive finals. And that is, as we touched on before with the Miami Heat being eliminated, that is Mr. Andre Iguodala, who played in 5 consecutive finals with the Golden State Warriors and then the one last year with the Miami Heat. And Jet, what do we think of Iggy's legacy? That 6 consecutive finals, 3 rings, he got a finals MVP that first year.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't even know this. I think that goes to show like how consistent of a player he is and how instrumental he is to winning. Although he was on some juggernauts, a la the Warriors with Kevin Durant, he won a Finals MVP. He was the best player in that series against a pretty good team with LeBron on it. Every time they face LeBron, he's guarding him. So I mean, this guy's up there with the best of the best, especially when it comes to playoff performances. Shout out to Andre Iguodala, man.
And a lot of people are upset that he won MVP over Steph, but that series changed when he came into the starting lineup.
Exactly.
He was a 6-man all year, and they made him a starter. That series kind of turned on its heels.
Yeah. And he was doing everything on the floor. He's being a playmaker. He was guarding the best player. He was hitting clutch threes. And to me, like, Andre Iguodala is a decent 3-point shooter, but like I feel like when the game is on the line and you really need a 3, he'll hit it. You know what I'm saying? He definitely has that. He has that. I don't know what you even call it. Like LeBron has that too, though. LeBron will shoot 20%.
As the kids say, swag.
Yeah, they just got it. They got the swag, man.
And especially the ability to do everything on the floor. That's extra critical when you consider he's on a team where a point guard doesn't really play point guard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of the Heat being swept, we didn't spend too much time on the team that actually did that. That's the Milwaukee Bucks. They put up 118 a night, which sounds like a lot. It's actually, considering like there's 3 teams that have 140. I guess it's not that much, but 118 at this point tonight still seems like a lot to me. I don't know. And they're only giving up 98. Now, granted, a lot of that allowing 98 is because Miami was so bad shooting the basketball, but it kind of brings out this. We constantly were criticizing Milwaukee, whether it was us or the national media at large. Milwaukee was subject to a lot of criticism for like, oh, we don't have to play now. We know we're going to be the playoffs. They wanted to do that light switch on off thing. And they were kind of struggling to keep up with Joneses with Brooklyn, despite all their interchanging parts, staying near the top, and Philadelphia being on the run that they were on. Is this sweep of Miami are we overvaluing it too much because Miami was just so bad, or is this really Milwaukee getting its mojo back and they're ready? Maybe the on-off switch thing worked.
I think it's a little bit of both because, like I said earlier, like last time these teams faced up against each other in the playoffs, the Miami Heat's game plan stopped Giannis from being Giannis. And they made everybody else on that team try to beat him, and it just did not work. And fast forward to today, or to these playoffs, and it's like I don't know what adjustments Milwaukee made, or even if it was that, like you said, maybe the Heat were just not good. But I think you have to give Milwaukee some kind of credit because not only did they beat them, they swept them. And not only did they sweep them, they were punching them in the mouth every night. So, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both.
Punched them in the mouth. It took quite a few teeth with them.
Right.
Playground rules, boys and girls.
But yeah, Milwaukee, I need to see, like you said, we need to see them against another team that had their mojo the whole season, and now they're in the playoffs and they're still playing the way that they were playing during the season. Miami had a terrible start. They started picking it up towards the end, and then we thought like, okay, Miami's back, and then they ran into a buzzsaw being the Bucks, and it's unfair, but it's unfortunate for the Heat. But shout out to Milwaukee, they did what they were supposed to do.
Bring on Brooklyn. Tarantula versus the Freak. Let's go.
Yeah, we need to see that.
Let's go. Hoping who knows if Kyrie's going to be on the court. I don't know if the water bottle assassin took him out for real.
But talking about another team on the East Coast, our beloved team, the New York Knicks. I want to preface this before we get into anything. The Knicks had a tremendous season. Nobody anywhere on planet Earth could say that they would think that we would be in the position that we're in. I'm talking about like a record-wise, but we're here. We're facing a very tough Atlanta Hawks team, and they're giving us everything that we can handle. Currently, the series is 3-1 Atlanta. I don't know. I'm distraught by this. I feel like Julius Randle has looked like Julius Randle from last season during the series.
He looked like the Lakers' Julius Randle.
Yeah, like, and it's not all his fault. You can see what Atlanta, if you watch the games, you can see what the Atlanta Hawks are doing. Every time that he gets the ball, they got 3 people in front of him. You know what I mean? And they're just like, yeah, somebody else got to beat us. You're not going to beat us. And it's working because Julius was our driving force. luckily, thank our lucky stars that we got Derrick Rose because he's been kind of our saving grace. But even with him putting up 18 to 20 points a game, it's still not enough, you know? You're still losing by 20 and so on and so forth. Jules had a good game. Yeah, definitely. Julius had a good game on paper if you didn't look at the shooting percentage. All right, get this. I want to get into some numbers about Julius Randle. Last game marks his best performance shooting-wise, and he's only shot 36% from the field. Prior to that, the other 3 games, 24%. 24%, 54 shots. This statistic is worse by any player. It's the worst by any player on a similar postseason span, meaning they played 3 games or more. Since they introduced the shot clock. Julius Randle has been the worst. I've seen things on Twitter with people saying we should bench Julius Randle. Not even play him for the whole game, but I think that'd be detrimental. We shouldn't do that. But
no, I don't want to score.
Yeah.
We already have enough problems scoring.
D Rose, he's been our savior. He's been saving us. He's been scoring like D Rose of old. Currently, right now, the series is 3-1 with Atlanta leading. And you know how history goes. You go down 3-1, it's pretty much wraps. But I'm faithful. We got to take it one game at a time. We got to win next game. Please, Knicks. Can't go like that.
And in the event that we're not RIP.
Yeah,
it was a fun run, boys.
excellent run. I can't even be mad at it.
But hey, you know what? Let's keep that. I like that silver lining approach. I like being positive. Let's stay positive. Hope we can pull some magic out. It may not be likely, but but yeah, again, like Derrick Rose. And the thing is, with Derrick Rose playing like he did in this series, it also kind of hurts us because then we go to start him because Peyton was struggling so much. Randall wasn't scoring what he had to do, so you have to fill that offensive production, the starting lineup by starting Rose, and now our bench is just utter garbage.
Yeah,
our depth is not good. That's the whole point of having Rose on the bench, having Gibson on the bench. Like, well, of course Gibson starts now because Nerlens Noel is hurt or whatever. But like that's the whole point of having those guys on the bench because our bench sucked.
Yeah.
Like other than quickly, they really sucked.
Obi has been playing good this series, or decently this series. I think this is the best I've ever seen him play, honestly.
He got some minutes. Maybe got a fire lit under his ass finally. But let's, maybe a realistic approach. Let's, in the event that we don't, maybe the Knicks got some negotiating power back when Julius Randle's contract is up. Maybe we don't have to give him a full max. Yeah. Like, well, listen, full max players win playoff games, and you didn't perform that well in the playoffs.
Right.
So, maybe they get a little bit of negotiating power back. Or the Knicks are not known for being very conservative and dealing out contracts. We all know that to be true.
Yeah.
And with our luck, they'll probably max out Derrick Rose, who's in his 30s now. As well as he's played, this man's still in his 30s with a bad knee. So let's let's pump the brakes on that. And knowing our luck, he'll probably get maxed out too. But again, phenomenal. In the event we don't come back, phenomenal season. Maybe they get some negotiating power back from for Julius Randle. RJ really improved a lot.
He did
in the playoffs. Shot was looking quite incredible, and quickly again. Let's bring back quickly. He's got a lot of minutes this year. He played exceptional. I'm sure he's going to be on the all rookie team. Well, let's see how good quickly really is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the future's bright for the orange and blue.
I think so as well.
Good building block, and who knows? Maybe we enticed our free agent, our status as a free agent location.
Yeah, I pray somebody mad decent seen us play this year and just like, I want to go there to the New York Knicks.
I want that garden.
I want the garden. Hey guys, that's the show. Thanks for kicking with us. It's been fun. If you miss us now, in between now and then, hit us up on our socials. Hoops Boys Pod on both Insta and Twitter. And until next time, peace. Knicks tape forever. Win or lose or draw. Let's go, Hoops Boys.